It's here. Hey, everybody. Manic Audiophile here. Joe, for those of you who don't know me as the Manic Audiophile, I wanted to do a quick video today. This is my second video, and I wanted to do it because, as you can see from where I was pointing, the Luxman D-03X CD transport DAC arrived yesterday from Dedicated Audio in Scottsdale, Arizona. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Matt. Did a great job of packaging it and shipping it, and it was glorious, or as I like to say, beautimous, to get that machine, to open it, to take it out, to place it on the cabinet. I took a few pictures of it, just because, for posterity. Um, and I can't tell you, well, before I say that, let me say something that I didn't say in my first video, which I think is important. I mentioned a lot of dealers and retailers in my first video because as I'm curating my system, I'm very, very appreciative of the people that have been helping me and helping me, select certain gear. I mean, I've made all of the decisions, myself, but the dealers that I've chosen to work with have been extremely helpful in terms of just making sure that they, what they had is in stock, that it gets shipped. In some cases, we've partnered to get stuff delivered sooner rather than just the ordinary, for example, FedEx ground versus FedEx overnight. Anyway, I wanted to recognize all of those people, from Thomas in Vegas to Daniel in New York to Dan in Scottsdale to the other Dan in Dallas, and a lot of other people in between, but I'm not being paid. I'm sure you can tell this is hardly a high budget operation here, but I'm not being paid or influenced to say anything that I say about my reference system. It's my reference system. I'm curating it. These aren't reviews. I'm not auditioning gear. I'm simply in the process of curating my own audiophile grade reference system for my own enjoyment and for the enjoyment of my wife. And she's going to enjoy it whether she likes it or not. And the same goes for, my family as we go, as you pan out, including kids, grandkids, et cetera, and then friends too. So it's something I'm curating, not just for myself primarily, but for my wife and I, and for our friends and our family, and as part of an experience that, for me has always been really important, which is music. But equally to music is the gear that I play it on, and so I'm very blessed in this day at this particular time under my particular situation. I'm in a position to allocate resources in such a way that, frankly, I'm sure can often seem a little self-centered and self-interested, and frankly, it's pretty self-interested. I'm doing this for my own amusement and my own enjoyment. But I want to get back to the Lux D03X CD Transport DAC. Before I put this in my chain, I was running the topping ES30 from Nirvana into my Luxman L507Z. And as I said in my last video, it's fine. It was great. It sounded nice. I mean, it sounded better than nice. It sounded really, really good. But having said that, I can't even begin to articulate the difference between this machine on my cabinet and the configuration that I had before the Lux D dropped into the chain. Um, I've been listening to over the last 24 hours or so, predominantly CDs. This morning, I listened to a little bit of streaming music from my Audiophile ThinkPad into the Lux D. By the way, I've also decided, and I'm pretty certain I've made the right decision, and won't be changing my mind. I've transitioned from Audiophile to Roon. I'm doing that because, in truth, while the Audiophile handoff to the Lux D is a more minimalist, sort of, simplified, clean process. The Roon adds an entire new dimension of of informational chaos, as it were. because it just provides you so much information on the artists and the background and the deep story. Um, and so, I made a decision that I was willing to sacrifice a little bit of the minimalism for the manic, chaotic adventurism because A, I'm the manic audiophile. I'm manic, right? And then B, because frankly, I really love the backstory. I love the texture, the color, the nuances, the subtleties, the story behind the story of an album, of a band, how they came together, who's in it, what their characteristics are and their relationships are to other bands in that genre or different genres. I'm fascinated by the story of music. I'm fascinated by the biography of the artists that I follow and put on my playlists. But then I'm also, frankly, very interested in the artists that I'm adding to my playlists for the first time. And as I mentioned to you in my first video, part of my audiophile journey, unlike what it was when I started out 45 years ago, is one where I'm broadening my horizons. I'm panning out the four corners of my tastes and my appreciation, my musical palette, if you will. And that's a lot of fun because some of the music in adjacent genres, think, light jazz or, even reggae, which I'm starting to really appreciate thanks to my son-in-law, kind of really, reminding me every time I see him and talk to him that how much good reggae music is out there. It's really, really fun to listen to that music on my reference system. Frankly, it's fun to listen to anything on my reference system because the reference system is coming into focus in such a way that's absolutely spectacular. Absolutely spectacular. I cannot overstate how spectacular my system sounds right now. And this is despite the fact that those cute little KEF 1033s are still in the chain. Now, look, I love British speakers. That's why I'm bringing in the Wharfdale Super Lintons. And I know that the Brits make a lot of other great speakers as well, the KEFs included. But these are 50-year-old KEF vintage speakers that, frankly, are just not up to the challenge of working side by side with my Lux 507Z and now my Lux uh, 03X. And then in a week or two or three, whenever it happens, my PDF my Lux PD turntable with the SME 3009 tone arm, probably loaded with either a Umami Red, a Hana Umami Red cartridge, which is, yes, a pretty penny for that. Or I'm still debating with myself about whether or not maybe I'll just load a Audiophile MC X40 or 40X. It's about a third of the price, but even that is not a rinky-dink moving coil cartridge. I mean, it costs more than a lot of it costs more than a lot of turntables, and of course the Hana Umami Red costs more than a lot of used cars. So I'm leaning towards the umami just because, frankly, I love the fact that the cartridge is red, and I love the synergy that's going to exist in my system with that red cartridge sitting next to those race car red woofers in each corner, which will then be sitting right next to the beautiful, gorgeous Wolfman Super Lintons with their screens on because that's the way it was designed and engineered to sound its most optimal. Look, one of the things that I try to do, and I don't always succeed, is I'm trying to curate a system and a hobby that is, as I said, very self-interested in terms of my own interests and needs and wants and hopes and desires, but also that doesn't drive my wife crazy. And I'll be honest, she's starting to, she's starting to kind of warm up to not only the hobby and the intensity that I demonstrate being in this hobby every day, and I'm sure I can be insufferable, just like I'm maybe insufferable right now. But she's starting to really kind of appreciate some of the nuances to the scheme, to the aesthetics. Screens on versus screens off. dimensional location in terms of speakers and angles and degrees all of these different things. The looks of the components themselves. The Luxmans are beautiful. I mean, they're just very, very sophisticated and elegant in their aesthetics. And so she really appreciates that. In other words, I'm not bringing in a bunch of eyesores, and forcing her to sort of coexist in the manic audiophile's chaotic, excellent adventure. I'm trying to be empathetic and sympathetic, but also emphatic about, you know, onward always in terms of, chasing chasing the prize, getting to the finish line, if there is such a thing in this hobby, but doing it in a way that is balanced and sensitive to the reality, which is that her and I are married. We're a couple. We're in this listening room together every day, and so she should feel comfortable in it as well. Now, back to the Lux 03X CD transport DAC. Now, this is not an inexpensive machine. Okay. So I'll just be honest about that right off the bat. This isn't something you find at Best Buy. This isn't something you would have found at you know, Federated. I'm dating myself by mentioning that store. It hasn't existed in probably 30 years. But my point is you're not going to find this on Crutchfield. You're not going to find it in any mid-end, audio store. This is a high-end piece. Costs more than most receivers. It costs more than most amps. It costs more than a lot of really outstanding top of the line high end speakers. So it's not an inexpensive unit, but man, holy cow, do you get your money's worth? So as I mentioned, I was doing some streaming this morning, yesterday evening when I got it, afternoon, all throughout the evening, I was listening to CDs. And I have probably about, I don't know, depending on 750,000 CDs. They're in a cabinet right there that you can't see it on camera. It's to the whatever. And that's where all my albums are too, by the way. I uh, I have a lot of CDs, and these are CDs that I've owned for 40 years. I mean, these are CDs. I have CDs that I bought in high school, and freshly out of high school, and then well into my 20s and 30s. So I have a lot, and I listen to my CDs, or at least I had been listening to my CDs a lot over the years until I no longer had a CD player, for a variety of reasons, moving, downsizing, doing this, doing that. So over the years, I saw what my so-called stereo reference system kind of was, and then evolved into, and then sort of devolved out of, and then kind of sat dormant for several years, and then over the last 6 months, has been resurrected, and over the last 90 days has been more than resurrected. It's achieving a level of sonic nirvana that you know I I certainly can't ignore, because it's so obvious and real, and you know potently, textural, is that the word? Physical. There's just a reality, a brutality, a tonality to it in terms of its authenticity and its integrity, that it's impossible to ignore. So the music that I'm listening to on CDs that I've listened to 1,000 times has had a rebirth and a reborn element to it that I've experienced these last several hours, that I can say is just nothing short of stunning. It's nothing short of stunning. The revelation that this CD player achieves and produces is just remarkable. Even my wife, who normally, when she's sitting in the room with me, is preoccupied with her own side gig, and so she's hearing the music, but she's not always listening to the music. Even she stopped yesterday evening and said, "What was that? What was that sound, that instrument?" And it was incredible, because we were listening to an album that she's heard a million times. And she was literally asking me the question. And this wasn't, I wasn't feeding her questions to ask me. She stopped from doing what she was doing and said, what was that instrument? And it was fun to experience that with her because I think she was now finally, maybe not necessarily finally, but obviously realizing that I'm not going insane. When I talk about the fact that a high-end reference system will reveal parts of the recordings that other systems cannot. It's not that they won't, it's just that they can't. And so the point is, it's really, really cool. I'm just getting started with this thing. I've only had it on the cabinet since yesterday. It's right now. It's about noon on Saturday. It arrived yesterday afternoon around 3:30, 4 o'clock. So I've been listening to the heck out of it. I'm going to be listening to it literally all day, and maybe a combination of CDs and streaming via the Roon, which I'm starting to really appreciate. Um, so it's great fun, folks. It's really, really great fun. And I want again, once again, point out how much I really appreciate some of you out there who do this a lot more frequently than I do. My hat's off to you because even though my setup is so cheap and amateur hour-ish, it's still purposeful, right? It's still intentional. You got to stop, you got to take time, you got to do it. And so it's something that I really mean it when I say I appreciate the effort that those of you who I follow expend to entertain and to educate and to inform and to encourage. I love the fact that you take the time to do the reviews, and 99.99% of you out there know a hell of a lot more about this stuff than I do from a specific spec side, specification maybe I should say. Um, but I think we all share the same common appreciation and enthusiasm for the gear, but of course, by a very important nexus, i.e., extension, the music. Because at the end of the day, the gear is super cool and I can spend hours just looking at it. But if I can't turn it on and actually play the gear and listen to the sounds and the you know the vibes that come through the speakers through the chain, that sonic Nirvana, that soundstage, that dimensional 3D tonality, the sparkle on the treble and the sort of meaty beady big and bouncy thumpish of the bass, which will be dramatically improved when I bring in the Wharfdales and the subs. But even now, even still, even in spite of the inadequacies of the KEF 1033s, it's just outstanding. The experience is 100% effing fantastic. Um, and I think that's pretty it. I think that's pretty it. So onward always. I'm Joe. I'm the Manic Audiophile. Just wanted to check in, give a quick little commercial for the new gear, the new kid in town, and hopefully convey some of my excitement and enthusiasm and exuberance. And again, thanks Dan over at Dedicated, all you Dans and Daniels and Thomases and all those of you that are part of my journey. I really appreciate it. I couldn't do it without you, nor would I want to. All right. Till next time. See ya.